Max Verstappen and Red Bull had a really bad weekend in Monza. Even though things could have been worse if Norris had won the race, it's now super clear that both championships are still up for grabs with 8 races left this season. But you could totally see how frustrated Max was during the whole race. After a really slow pit stop that made his race even worse, his radio messages weren't happy either. The car is now performing badly on both types of racetracks. Is this the clearest hint we've gotten about Max's future with Red Bull? One of the biggest letdowns in Formula One just happened in Monza. Max finished outside the top 5, and both his main rivals finished way ahead of him. Max is going to have a lot to say to Red Bull's engineers in the next few weeks. The car has become really hard to drive. Everyone had high hopes because Red Bull was supposed to be good on low downforce tracks like they showed in Spa, but the only position Max gained on track was because Russell had a problem in turn 1 and had to change his front wing during his first pit stop when Max and Perez started the race on hard tires. They were the only ones in the top 10 to do this. It was obvious they would stay out longer. They were hoping for a safety car or some situation where they could benefit from pitting later in the race. That never happened. Not only did it not happen, but Red Bull's teamwork was really bad this weekend. It cost Max 6.4 seconds in his first pit stop. You could see him hitting his steering wheel twice when leaving the pits. Even though it didn't change where he finished, it still hurt and showed how frustrated Max is with his team right now after the race. Even the team radio wasn't as positive as you'd expect from Max when his engineer, GP, told him he finished in 6th place and said, "That was a good drive, Max. I'm sorry we couldn't give you a better car this weekend, but a very good drive from you." Max's response was pretty harsh. He said, "We are out of place. I guess everything went against us. I mean, not the power we wanted, not the pace, not the pit stops. But yeah, we have to work hard to change the car around." Also, Max has criticized the whole team for not paying attention to the race like he wanted them to. It's not often you hear Max asking the team to be more active. The 3-time world champion said, "Can the people in the background please be awake? I know this is a tough position, but it's important." Of course, Max hoped the damage would only be 6 points to Norris, or even less. He was holding the extra point for fastest lap until the very last lap of the race. But Norris seemed to respond really well here, cutting down Max's lead by 8 more points. Right now, it's weird that Red Bull can and should be grateful to Ferrari for doing such a great job with their strategy. It did give them enough tires left to win the race and take away extra points from Norris, on the other hand. The team championship is something Red Bull will very likely drop to below 2nd place. Ferrari's 1st and 4th place finish means they're now close to 2nd place, right behind McLaren. They might even challenge the McLaren team themselves. The gap that Red Bull has over McLaren is only 8 points. Ferrari has managed to get within just 39 points behind Red Bull and 31 points behind McLaren. What looks like it's going to be a very interesting second half of the season might not even include Red Bull in first place. The fact that they've been so slow and uncompetitive on a track that was supposed to suit their car way better than they expected shows that the next 2 races in, Baku and Singapore, are going to be probably the hardest ones in their history. To make things worse, Joes, Verstappen has spoken quite negatively about Christian Horner. The father of the 3-time world champion wasn't particularly happy with how the whole team is handling the situation and how his son is being affected the most by it. When talking about the gap that Red Bull now has to McLaren, Joe said, "We didn't expect the gap to be that big. It was a huge disappointment. Max is definitely a fighter, but after the race he was pretty much done with it, especially because Red Bull just didn't get it right. At the beginning of the season where you win races, then of course it all feels right. But Max also said then that the balance is not right. Of course that was not brought out at the time. The team tried to keep it inside," Max complained about the car's balance about 3 months ago, only they didn't really believe it or they didn't really see it. Now you're actually a bit too late. Both Joes and Helmut Marko have criticized Horner and said that he's now in a very bad situation. While he's trying to make progress, it's clear as the sky that the car has gone from the fastest to occasionally the second, and potentially the fourth fastest car on the grid. This is something that Max wouldn't like to have in the team he's representing for the future. This also raises the alarm of Max leaving the team sooner rather than later, especially if you consider the fact that 2025 should be more or less the same in terms of how competitive they are to what we're seeing right now. It's not helping that the car is just nowhere near where it's supposed to be. To see Perez so close to Max just goes to show that the team has gotten much worse with their upgrades. Even though Horner was talking confidently that there's no reason to panic because the team will do anything in their power to get back the winning pattern they had at the beginning of the year. After the qualifying session in Monza, the tone of the British team boss has changed a lot. The 50-year-old said, "The situation we're currently in is very tricky, and I think we simply don't understand it. We did a 19.6 on old tires and couldn't go better than 20.0 on 2 sets of new tires. The balance just isn't there." You can hear from Max's comments there's something that fundamentally is happening that we're not on top of at the moment. We obviously need to understand it and understand why on the older tires we were able to get that time, and also understand why on 2 sets of new tires we couldn't get anywhere near it. But the worrying fact is that Red Bull has worked on solutions over the summer break, and it was more than obvious that they weren't satisfied with what they got. Ever since the weekend in Monza has started, for Max to finish 6th after being 2nd in his home race, it just shows that there's a lack of speed in the car. When talking about the urgent fixes that the team needs to apply to the RB20, Horner said, "We ran an old setup to see if that fixed any of the issues at all. The reality was we still had the same handling problems and issues, so that's given. An awful lot of data for the guys, but a lot to get our heads around. We need to address it quickly because McLaren have made a significant step over the last few races. We are now behind Ferrari and Mercedes in Monza as well." Again, it would have been a huge question mark whether Max would have gotten near Russell if everything had gone right for the British driver after turn 1. But obviously, we cannot look back at these types of scenarios as everything's part of the race. One thing is for certain, though, Red Bull are slowly but surely losing the ground under their feet. This is something that Max has called attention to in the past couple of months. It does seem like his requests have fallen on deaf ears, as his father has accused the whole team, especially Christian Horner, for the outcome of the RB20's mid-season development, and again, while Red Bull tends to deny it constantly, Helmut Marko might have slipped a bit of information that the team wouldn't like to be heard in the media. That is the lack of presence of the mastermind called Adrian Newey in the garage. It does look like it's not a coincidence that the downfall of Red Bull has started precisely when Newey decided to leave the team. While this is a sport in which one man doesn't usually make that big of a difference, like we're witnessing in Red Bull, the lack of knowledge from the engineers led by the team clearly states otherwise. When talking about the whole Adrian Newey situation, who was expected to announce his next team in the next couple of weeks, Helmut Marko said, "Newey is no longer fully involved in developing the car." It's true that his experience and knowledge could certainly have helped in this situation. With all of this in mind, do you think that Max should be angry at Red Bull for throwing away such a competitive car in the dumpster and effectively going back to the specifications that brought their glory in the first half of the season? Let the US know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.